Hello, everyone who's joined us this evening. Thanks for joining us. If you are just joining us, let us know where you're calling from. Where are you joining us from? I sit in Madison, Wisconsin. Just recently moved here from Alaska. And so it's I'm enjoying the Midwest spring. It's not freezing cold and it's not dreary. So it's lovely weather with lots of migratory birds passing through. How about you all? Where are you joining us from? Just stick it in the chat. And for those of you that need to know, the chat button is down in the bottom of your screen. I'm sure you guys are all well versed in Zoom by now, but let us know where you're joining us from. And then perhaps share your favorite migratory bird that you've seen this season. What are you all seeing? In Ohio, Houston, Texas, San Francisco, California.
It's so nice that it's so widely spread.
Yeah, we have a nice variety of folks that participate in our bird book club. And for those of you that are just joining us, welcome to the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. We appreciate your voice, you're visiting us this evening. And put in the chat where you're joining us from. And please know that we are recording this session. So we just like for people who weren't able to join us because they're too busy out with migratory bird watching right now, maybe, and they can come back and visit the session at a later time. And then also, for those of you that are joining us, feel free to turn your cameras on. It's nice to see your smiling faces. And if you've got kids in the background or dogs or cats in the background, that's completely okay. We're good with that. We do appreciate it when you mute your speakers just so that there's not background noise. And as we go into this session, if you have a question, please put it in the chat and then I can call on you. You can either ask the question yourself of our lovely author, Charlotte, who's joined us this evening, all the way from Australia. If you, just have something that you want to add, put it in the chat. Happy to have you turn off your, or to unmute yourself so that you can ask the question. And we're going to give folks just about another 30 seconds to kind of settle into the Zoom this evening, and then we'll get started. So we've got somebody from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm sure that you are seeing lots of migratory birds as they're heading up north. Phoenix, Arizona. Oh my gosh. Lots of great birds there. Whittier, California. We've got a couple people from Ohio. And again, folks, my name's Alicia King, joining you from Madison, Wisconsin. I am your host this evening, and I am a volunteer for Environment for the Americas. And this evening, in addition to Charlotte, who is our author this evening, Daisy is our tech behind the scenes, and she does all of the work related to the Bird Book Club. So thanks, Daisy, for being here and making sure that that this works. I appreciate that. So folks, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to, in my typical fashion, start with an introduction to Environment for the Americas. So I was having a little technical difficulty earlier, so I'm going to hope that I don't bungle this too much as I get ready to share my screen with you. Let's see. There we go. So I'm thinking that you are going, or you're able to see my screen. My slide should say, welcome to the Bird Book Club.
Yes, quack, quack.
Excellent. Thanks, Daisy. So welcome to the Bird Book Club. We love doing this. We love the fact that we can find authors from all over the globe to talk about birds. And tonight's a little bit of a different story, and I'll get into that in a moment. But for now, I just want to give you an overview of Environment for the Americas and talk about the work that we do. The work that we do together unifies our voices for birds and their conservation, and it's important work for a variety of reasons. And we do a lot of community work. We do work locally, regionally, and globally, nationally and internationally. And so we have a lot of methods that we use to be able to do the work that we do. We gather a lot of data, again, at all of those different levels, and then we combine them for a global look at the conservation information that we gather. We do local surveys with local organizations, and we engage people on the ground to really think about, what's the most valuable work that we can be doing. We attend a lot of conferences. The conferences help us network and help us understand what's going on in the bird conservation world and with organizations that have a conservation theme or a conservation mission, and that we can engage with to do more work. We produce a lot of educational materials and do a lot of community outreach, and you'll see smiling faces in various bird festivals and birdathons and places just, where we think we can make an impact. Our education materials are frequently done in multiple languages, so in particular Spanish and French, but we will choose other languages to do some of our educational materials, and those are all available wildly for the use of people who are doing festivals or education opportunities, teachers, and that sort of thing. Another really cool thing that we do is we have interns that we work with. And so we have partnerships with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, partnerships with the National Park Service, and partnerships with the U.S. Forest Service. And those partnerships allow us to match funding to be able to hire interns to do bird-focused conservation work on public lands and in communities. And so those internships are very specific to work that's being done within those organizations and the communities. And we try to make sure that it's a healthy stipend and enough of a living that they can be comfortable as they're learning how to do conservation and learning how to get into agencies, as well as nonprofit organizations, if they want to do that as part of their career or, part of their university training. One of the things that Environment for the Americas is really well known for is World Migratory Bird Day. For those of you that have been around for a while, that we used to call it International Migratory Bird Day. And so we have joined forces with organizations that really promote and work on migration at that global level. And so while we coordinate World Migratory Bird Day, we do it in collaboration and cooperation with the Convention on Migratory Species and the Agreement on the Conservation of African Eurasian Migratory Water Birds. So those allow us to expand our migratory work on a more global level. And this World Migratory Bird Day really celebrates the phenomenon of bird migration and serves as a call of action to help protect the birds that we share. So that's our emphasis, is really getting people aware of what's going on with birds, what's going on during their migration, and the things that impact migratory birds. Our theme this year is water. Water is incredibly important, not only for birds, but for us. And so our emphasis this year is really thinking about how do we keep our water clean? How do we make sure that our environment is safe and healthy for birds? So not only for birds, but for people. So I want to share with you also that we do a lot of partnerships, and I'm not going to list them all here, but because it's kind of spring and because I've been seeing hummingbirds lately in my backyard up in the northern part of the country, Our Western Hummingbird Partnership is incredibly important for studying hummingbirds, and we support research and really think about factors that threaten hummingbirds, and then also that benefit hummingbirds. So we raise awareness through trainings, through public events, through workshops, and a whole lot more things that can be done at the community level, in schools, universities, and so forth, and with our partners. So partnerships is a huge part of what Environment for the America does, and is crucial in making sure that we really think about how our actions can impact birds and their well-being. We are a nonprofit organization and raise funds through a variety of ways, a lot of grant writing, and a lot of, putting our hands out and saying, well, pretty please, can we have some money? We also have a store. Daisy manages the store for us, shopenvironmentamericas.org. And we have a lot of really cool things for sale, and that those sales help support us in the work that we do. The thing that's really prominent on the website are the educational materials. Many of those are free and downloadable, but a lot of these things can be purchased. You can share them with your schools. If you decide to have a festival, which we hope you all will participate in some kind of festival about birds. Lots of books, lots of cool things that you can, just have fun shopping and support Environment for the Americas. So a win-win. I know it's first on my list for like Mother's Day. What do I need for Mother's Day? Father's Day is coming up. What can I get on EFTA, on Environment for the Americas, for any of the holidays, or just, whatever. So we encourage you to become a friend of ours. There are different levels that you can become a friend, and they come with different benefits. So, an opportunity for you to support us, get extra information, and be able to keep in touch with, what it is that we're doing. And then also, we are on a lot of social media. So we'd love for you to tweet about us, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. And if you want to know more about the organization, email us and chat with us. And if you go to the website, you can see different ways of reaching out to us, as well as just, emailing us directly. And then I'm pretty easy to find if you want to email me directly. If you're interested in becoming more engaged, perhaps an author who wants to be a part of the Bird Book Club, we would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. And then our next Bird Book Club is Baby Bird Identification, and it's a North American guide by Linda Tuttle Adams. And for those of you that are thinking about baby birds right now, and maybe what you might be doing if you find a baby bird, I'll remind you that it's best in most cases just to leave them alone, to maybe make sure there's no cats wandering out in the environment. Or, if you know that it's fallen from a nest, you can gently pick it up and put it back in the nest. And we encourage you to mostly leave birds alone unless you really know that something is wrong. But so I'm looking forward to that, because baby bird identification can be a tricky one. So for tonight, I am so excited. This is a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit different of a book than we typically look at. This was a fiction. This is a fiction book, and it was it was like I was reading along and turning the page, and I was reading one night, and my husband said, okay, well, we have to get up early in the morning. And I'm like, no, just one more page, just one more page. Oh no, just one more chapter. So it was thrilling to be able to read this book, and I had a hard time putting it down. So the book by Charlotte McConaghy is again, not one that's typical of what we read, but the character in this book is a strong woman, and goes through a variety of adventures. And I think it's just fascinating the way that Charlotte has shared this story and her adventure with us. And so Charlotte is an author, as well as, if I'm not mistaken, a videographer and a film producer. So rather than me telling you about Charlotte, I am going to ask Charlotte to tell us about her. And then I am going to ask her to read a couple segments of her book for us. So Charlotte, welcome. Appreciate you joining us. And I think it's what, 10 a.m. in the morning where you are? So
It is, yeah. It's a beautiful sunny winter morning.
Welcome, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be here. This is such an amazing organization. So me, okay, I have been writing for most of my life. When I was a lot younger, I wrote big epic fantasy stories because I wanted to escape into kind of adventurous worlds. And as I got a bit older and started to kind of see what was happening to our world, I decided I could no longer write about made up places. In fact, I kind of felt compelled to write about our world. And that's sort of how this book came to be. It was a change for me. It was I needed to learn a whole new set of skills to write this book. And it sort of started because I wanted to write about a woman who was more deeply connected to the natural world than perhaps most of us are, or wilder than most of us are, or more able to connect to her wildness. And I found that as I was writing about nature and the natural world, I couldn't ignore our impact on the natural world. And that's how this book sort of turned into the story of species loss. It's the story of Franny Stone, who is an Irish-Australian ornithologist who decides that she will follow the migration of the last flock of Arctic terns from the Arctic all the way down to the Antarctic. And she does this because the book is set in the very near future during the peak of the extinction crisis, when all the animals in the world are either gone or very close to gone. And so this is a journey for her of loss and grief and redemption. And I used to think it was about rediscovering hope, but I think it's more about rediscovering purpose, which is so kind of important now for all of us in taking on this fight. Anyway, enough rambling from me. I'll read a little bit. I thought I might read a couple of pages just from the very opening of the book, and then maybe a couple more sort of birdie pages from further in. And I will also just kind of frame all of this by saying that I love birds and I notice birds and I watch birds and I enjoy birds, but my enthusiasm and love for them far outstrips my knowledge of birds. So you will all know far more about birds than I do. But it's kind of nice to come from the other side of things and just acknowledge what normal non-birder people feel when they see a bird. Okay, so from the start of the book. The animals are dying. Soon we will be alone here. Once my husband found a colony of storm petrels on the rocky coast of the untamed Atlantic. The night he took me there, I didn't know they were some of the last of their kind. I knew only that they were fierce in their night caves and bold as they dove through moonlit waters. We stayed a time with them, and for those few dark hours we were able to pretend we were the same, as wild and free. Once, when the animals were going, really and truly, and not just in warnings of dark futures, but now, right now, in mass extinctions we could see and feel, I decided to follow a bird over an ocean. Maybe I was hoping it would lead me to where they'd all fled, all those of its kind, all the creatures we thought we'd killed. Maybe I thought I'd discover what cruel thing drove me to leave people and places and everything always. Or maybe I was just hoping the birds' final migration would show me a place to belong. Once it was birds who gave birth to a fiercer me. Greenland, nesting season. It's only luck that I'm watching when it happens. Her wing clips the hair-thin wire and the basket closes gently over her. I sit up straighter. She doesn't react at first, but she knows somehow that she is no longer free. The world around her has changed just a little or a lot. I approach slowly, reluctant to scare her. Wind screams, biting at my cheeks and nose. There are others of her kind all over the icy rocks and circling the air, but they're quick to avoid me. My boots crunch and I see a ruffle of her feathers, that hesitant first flap, the will I try to break free moment. The nest she's built with her mates is rudimentary, a scattering of grass and twigs wedged into a crevice in the rocks. She doesn't need it anymore. Her fledglings are already diving for their own food, but she returns to it like all mothers unable to let go. I stop breathing as my hand moves to lift the basket. She flaps only once, a sudden burst of defiance before my cold hand closes over her body and ceases her wings movement. I have to be quick now. I've been practicing, and so I am, my fingers swiftly looping the band over her leg, shifting it over the joint to the upper stretch beneath her finger feathers. She makes a sound I know too well, one I make in my dreams most nights. I'm sorry, we're nearly there, I say. I start to tremble, but keep going, it's too late now. You've touched her, branded her, pressed your human self upon her. What a hateful thing. The plastic tightens firmly on her leg, keeping the tracker in place. It blinks once to tell me it's working. And just as I'm about to let her go, she turns very still so that I can feel her heartbeat pounding inside my palm. It stops me, that pat, pat, pat. It's so fast and fragile. Her beak is red like she's dipped it in blood. It turns her strong in my mind. I place her back in the nest and edge away, taking the cage with me. I want her to explode free. I want there to be fury in her wings, and there is. She is glorious as she surges. Feet red to match her beak, a velvet cap of black, twin blades of a tail, and those wings, the sharpness of their edges, the elegance. I watch her circle the air, trying to understand this new piece of her. The tracker doesn't hinder her. It's as small as my little fingernail and very lightweight, but she doesn't like it. She swoops at me suddenly, giving a shrill cry. I grin, thrilled, and duck to protect my face, but she doesn't swoop again. She returns to her nest and settles over it as though there is still an egg that she must protect. For her, the last 5 minutes never happened. I've been out here on my own for 6 days. My tent was blown into the sea last night as wind and rain lashed it from around my body. I've been pecked on the skull and hands more than a dozen times by birds who have been named the most protective in the sky. But I have 3 banded Arctic terns to show for my efforts, and veins filled with salt. I pause on the crest of the hill to look once more, and the wind calms a moment. The ice spreads wide and dazzling, edged by a black and white ocean and distant grey horizon. Great shards of cerulean ice float languidly by, even now within the heart of summer, and dozens of Arctic terns fill the white of sky and earth, the last of them perhaps in the world. If I were capable of staying any place, it might be here. The birds won't stay, and neither will I. I can stop there, or I could read some more pages from further in the book, but maybe, is that enough, do you think? Or you're muted, Alicia.
Of course I am, because the neighbor's dog was barking. So what do folks think? Would you like to hear a little bit more? There's a lot of adventure in this book. You want to chat a little bit, and then maybe we'll
sure.
go back to reading something. And I think I have a passage in here that that I have a question. Read question mark. You said at the beginning that you wanted to tell a story. Well, you're telling the story kind of in the future, and that the environment's very important to you, and the impact that we have on the world is very important. And because my question was really, what made you think of this particular story or this book? What was your motivation in addition to wanting to tell a story, conservation wise?
Mhm. Well, so I think this the very kind of early germs of the idea came to me when I was traveling overseas. I was in my early 20s. I wanted to explore my roots, my ancestry. I think a lot of us do that. So I wound up in the UK, traveling around, and I just remember I kept seeing so many beautiful birds. I was in Iceland and was seeing the grey-lag geese there, and I was on the coast of Ireland where the puffins are, and just kind of everywhere I would go, there would be beautiful birds popping up that were very mysterious to me, and I couldn't sort of help wondering where they were going and where they'd been, and it just seemed like this kind of beautiful thing to be able to traverse the world. And I think we've all kind of had fantasies about flight and being able to soar and take off and journey, and it sort of, I think it just it started that idea of a woman who was following these birds. And she's a very I guess she's a bit of a lost soul. She's a wanderer too, and I think she's a bit migratory like the birds she loves. The story is very much about her trying to find a place to belong, but also accepting that her nature is to be wild and free, and that movement is life for her, just as it is for so many birds and animals. And I was writing this story, and I kind of had fallen in love with the Arctic tern when I found out about its extraordinary migration. It's the longest of any animal in the world. And I'm sure as everyone knows this, but it's when I found out that the distance it travels in its 30-year lifespan is the equivalent of to the moon and back 3 times, the storyteller in me just kind of swooned. It's so amazing, that length, that journey, for such a small creature to go on. It felt like a kind of momentous, I mean, it's a metaphor for courage, I think, that it's just such a courageous journey to go on. So I was following this kind of migration. I had this story. I was writing about this character and these birds and loving it all, but also I knew that it wasn't enough. It was falling flat, and I wasn't quite sure why. And like I said earlier, I think it was because I was writing about nature, but I wasn't writing about the truth of nature, and that's what we're kind of doing to nature and to the creatures we're sharing this planet with. And so I was sort of reading a lot at the time, and I came across this article that very starkly laid out the fact that we are barreling headlong into a world without animals. We've killed so many. In the last sort of 50, 60, 70 years alone, we have decimated the animal population, human impact, climate change. And it just really struck me as kind of impossibly tragic. I couldn't stop imagining this world without the animals. And it sort of came down to a single question of how would it feel to be alone here? And I think that's sort of the thesis of this novel, about the loneliness of being without the animals. And I didn't want to, I suppose I could have thrown myself more headlong into the world building of this and kind of acknowledging that the impact of no animals would be catastrophic on us as well as, the planet. But I sort of wanted to just stay with the loss of the animals for itself, and just try to acknowledge that it's tragic just because of the loss of them, not because of any impact it will have on us, if that makes sense. I wanted to kind of take ourselves out of the center of this narrative and just, I suppose, write a love letter to them. Yeah.
There are so many parts of this book that do feel like a love letter.
Mm.
And the way that you weaved into this, the birds and their life and their struggles. And as we all know, the life of a bird is not an easy life.
Mm.
There's a lot of hazards and a lot of things that birds face along their migratory bird route and just in their everyday life. They don't all survive. And you have weaved into your book a bit of romance, a bit of angst and anxiety, and some interesting metaphors, for the lack of a better word. And I have some questions about some of the things that you have in your book related to that. But it's interesting how you do kind of make the point that you've just talked about, that at one point in your book, you're on the ship or on the boat, and the migratory birds have come and landed on the deck.
That was the part
And
I was going to read, actually.
oh, okay, maybe we should read that
Well,
before
yeah,
I
I mean,
say
I'm
too much
happy to.
more. You
Yeah,
want
I can
to?
read a couple of pages, and then you can ask the question if
Yeah,
you want, to
yeah.
give a bit of
And for those
context.
of you that are listening, listen to this and think about what do you think I'm going to ask about this, or what do you think I'm going to call attention to? So put your thinking caps on. Feel free to turn your cameras on so I can see your faces as you think about what is Alicia thinking about this passage that Charlotte's going to read.
Okay, and so they're on the boat. Franny's kind of made her way onto a fishing boat and convinced them to follow the Arctic terns that she's banded in order for them to show them where there's fish. Basically, the fishing industry is being kind of has taken all the fish from the sea. There's hardly any left. These fishermen are struggling, so they've agreed to follow the terns in hopes they'll show them where the fish are. So we're in the North Atlantic Ocean. The birds are tired already, even so early in the journey, so it's lucky that we've come to find them. They make a beeline for us, and as though the sky has shattered into falling, flapping pieces, they land on the boat, all over it, at least 20 of them. They fold their wings and gaze calmly at the passing world, happy to catch a ride. My muscles lock me in place. I'm terrified of startling them. But the longer I stand there holding my breath, the clearer it becomes that they won't be startled by anything. They're utterly unbothered by my presence. Day comes down from the crow's nest, and the others stop what they're doing to join us on the deck and watch the birds, to be near them. You forget until you see one, Basil says, and we know what he means. Easy to forget how many there once were, how common they seemed. Easy to forget how lovely they are. And Nick loses interest first and tries to order me back to the chores, but when I give him the finger, he leaves me to it. I only go inside when it reaches the coldest part of deep night, but for the rest of their visit, I sit with the birds as close as I can get and write letters to Niall. It's my method of logging everything, describing the terns to him in great detail, how they use their beaks to scratch beneath their feathers, and how they call to each other across the boat using a language I'd give anything to speak. How, when they feel a draft, they spread their wings and let it lift them off their perches, and they just hover there, airborne, as though for no reason at all but the fun of it. I write it all down for him so that when he reads the words, he will be filled with the courage of the birds, just as the wind fills their feathers. The terns have been with us for 24 hours when Ennis emerges to sit beside me on the deck. He alone hasn't come to spend time among them. The grey at his temples glistens in the afternoon light. Guess you were wrong about the storm, I say. Where's yours? Ennis asks. I point her out, sitting on the roof of the bridge, the piece of plastic on her leg poking free of her plumage. Her eyes are closed. I think she's sleeping. Why aren't they moving? Ennis asks. There's hardly any wind. They're using the boat to rest. Can we shoo them along? I shoo them along. No, Ennis, we can't shoo them along. They'll go when they want to and we can follow. If I had the power, I'd carry the birds all the way, protect them from their journey's difficulty. Then again, it's a fool who tries to protect a creature from its own instincts. Ennis leaves without another word, returning to the bridge. I watch him briefly through the salty glass, and then I go back to watching sweeter things. By dusk, the wind has picked up. I haven't moved from my spot, unable to waste a single precious moment. The crew's been taking it in turns to bring me food, sparing a little time. to sit with me and ask questions about the birds. How do they know where to go? Why do they fly so far? Why are they the last? Why these ones? What makes them luckier than the others? I don't know the answers, not really, but I do my best. And anyway, it's not really answers they want. It's simply remembering what it feels like to love creatures that aren't human. A nameless sadness, the fading away of the birds, the fading away of animals. How lonely it will be here when it's just us. I'm not the only one who's spent as much time as possible on deck. Last night, Malachi became convinced he needed to wrap the terns in blankets and take them into his cabin to keep them safe and warm. I had assured him captivity was no way for the birds to spend their last migration and that it's early yet, they're still strong, still happy to be in flight. I caught Leah singing to one, and despite orders, Basil has been sneaking them breadcrumbs they have no interest in, even though feeding the birds is moronic since we're meant to be following them on their hunt for food. The crew appears now. I warned them that when the weather changed, the birds would leave, so they've come to say goodbye. The first to rise is mine. I've taken to thinking of her as mine because she's burrowed inside and made a home in my ribcage. With the sun setting golden, she lifts and spreads her wings, hovering, testing the air, her hunger perhaps, her desire. It's right, whatever she feels, because she flaps once and it's as if she floats up into the sky, effortlessly higher and higher and unbound. As the others of her kind follow her, the crew members wave, calling their farewells, wishing the birds a bon voyage. Samuel uses meaty fingers to dash away his tears. When he sees me looking, he spreads his hands and says helplessly, if they're the last. He doesn't need to finish. Don't go too far, I hear Nick tell one of the terns softly as it takes flight. I find mine in the sky again, leading the way. She is smaller and smaller, halved and halved again. Don't, I whisper inside, don't leave. But I know she must, it's in her nature.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so lovely. Any guesses from folks joining us this evening and what I might have been thinking about that passage and want to ask?
I'm not sure. I'm curious.
So there is so much packed in that. And like I said, so much packed in this book. And just, you have this flair for romance, as well as the harshness of the world, as well as for your character, for Fanny, and the life that she has led and the life that she is leading. And then and I'm not going to give it too much away because of people who might not have read the book. So toward the end of the book, what her, what she endures toward the end of the book, of the kind of her lifestyle. But here's my thing that as I was reading that particular passage, I was thinking about perhaps the gruffness of the people, on the ship, and it's like, oh, those birds, and why are they landing on my ship, and that kind of thing. And then the fact that she sits among them and it's like, no, I'm not going back to my chores. I'm going to enjoy these birds. And, her bird that's tagged or has is it a radio tag? Some kind of tag to
geolocator.
Yeah. And so I think just, what was going through my brain was that the fact that she was there and so intensely watching them and being a part of their resting on the boat. And then she's a fierce woman and so capable and so strong and so determined, but yet she's a softie. And even though she gets the whole, the birds need to go on and, we can't put them in blankets and take them into our cabin for the night. I mean, that's, ridiculous. And then throwing the breadcrumbs, really, give me a break. But she says that, when the birds are on the deck, that she would love to give them a ride. That she wants to, wouldn't it be great to, help them out and, forgo all of the dangers or the things, that they could be facing. And then, and then she's back to, oh, no, they need to go on their own. And then, she watches hers, get smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's kind of what was going through my head. It was like, wow, lots of different emotions in that passage and lots of different, kind of realities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, she's a creature of dualities, I think, Franny. She yeah, like you said, she's tough, but she's also incredibly vulnerable, and fragile because of the life that she's been through, but also her love for the creatures. And I think because she is such a wild creature herself, um, and so sort of untethered, I suppose, in a way, to normal societal values. You know, she doesn't subscribe to wanting a career. She has no ambition. Um, she has no greed. She wants to live as simply as she can, um, which connects her to the animals more and the birds. And I think it just kind of makes her a really perfect mouthpiece to explore the grief of losing creatures that you love. And yeah, you're right. There's that sort of struggle between how close can we get to them? You know, we want to be closer to them, but it's our existence that's harmful and dangerous to them. Can we make ourselves more than just a force of destruction in their lives? Can we make ourselves a force for nurturing? I think she embodies that kind of that battle.
And you can see that throughout the whole book. And I have a couple more questions, but I want to call on Jane. Jane has a thought, you know, something that kind of struck her. So Jane, do you want to unmute yourself and come on? I don't know if you want to come on camera, or
I think there's one from
there I am.
there you go.
Okay, Charlotte, one of the things that really struck me about the book was the psychological deterioration or profile of Fanny, and its likeness to the behavior of the terns. So she's very single-minded in her focus to follow the terns, and she is impulsive in getting onto the boat and persuading the captain to go with her. She has kind of a combination of single-mindedness and flightiness. And I thought that was a lovely parallel.
Thank you. Yeah. I think you're spot on. That's kind of how the birds seem, isn't it? Sometimes they go where they need to go in any given moment, and yet they have this kind of incredible overarching drive to get to the place that they need to get to. And that's that sort of deep, instinctive, nature-based drive for survival and for movement and for life. I liked that Franny sort of had that same thing within her. She's seemingly, as you say, very, very flighty in terms of never being able to stay in one place or connect to, you know, she struggles to hold on to connections with people because she's constantly sort of compelled by her wandering nature and her wandering feet. And yet over the course of this novel, she has this one purpose, which is to finish this migration. And I think she's really inspired by the birds and the difficulty for them of these flights and how much harder we're making these flights for them. But she always kind of comes back to the idea that if they can do it, if they can be brave enough and determined enough to do it, she can find a way to do it too. So yeah, I always wanted her to kind of reflect the birds in that way.
Thanks for your question, Jane. And Susanna, I think I'm saying Susanna, would you like to ask your question? She has a similar question to a question that I also had. So Susanna, you want to come off mute?
Okay.
There you go.
Hi. Yeah, I was just taken fancy by Captain Ennis. He, you get this idea that, fishermen are these salty dogs, and just, but he seems to have a tenderness about him. And like you said, a gruffness to him. But yeah, he seems so tender with her. And I'm wondering if if, you know, being the captain of a ship and just really not having those social norms as a regular family man, it seems that he's kind of taken Fanny under his wing, and just kind of they both seem vulnerable together, and it's kind of nice to see that. So, but I
Yeah.
wonder how did you come up with the characters to put to be on the ship together?
Well, I had a lot of fun with the crew of the ship. As you can imagine, sailors are such fascinating people. They're,
Yeah.
you know, they're so kind of superstitious. They've got these kind of rituals and traditions, but they're also incredibly interesting people that tend to come from all over the place. And I sort of thought of them as, in a way, they were kind of refugees from land. They were all people who didn't have lives that they could kind of go back to, and so they sort of they belonged to the ocean and to this ship, and they were outcasts and misfits that found a family with each other. And I really liked that. Franny kind of presents one, I guess, philosophy around this issue, and that's, you know, she's all about conservation and protecting the animals of the world. She's a staunch vegetarian. She doesn't eat fish. And so she's jumping on board with this crew of a commercial fishing vessel, and I wanted them to kind of present something very different in this issue, and that's the idea that, you know, I suppose I didn't want everyone to seem bad or good. I wanted it to be more complex and nuanced than that, and I wanted them to find a common ground over the course of this journey, and to sort of start to really understand each other's perspectives. And you know, that's important to me. I think that we all try to work together and understand each other as a means of moving forward and surviving this. And so, yeah, I mean, Ennis, he is that sort of gruff, you know, he spends his life on the sea. He doesn't really know how he can possibly go back to his children after having spent so much time away from them. And he's a bit of a, I suppose he's a bit of a Captain Ahab figure, in that he's very driven towards wanting this golden catch. You know, he thinks it'll set him up to be able to give up this life at sea. And yeah, and I think he really needs the sort of connection that he finds with Franny about opening up to caring about more than just this one thing, and realizing that, you know, there is another life out there for him. It's kind of a love story between them, I think, in a way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question. And I just want to call attention to Ken's comment in the chat. As an ex-Navy man, I'm not sure what to make of that.
Oh, I'm very, very fond of sailors, Ken. I hope that's clear.
By the way, behind me, you can see a painting of the ship that I served on, the USS Ranger, and
Wow.
we made a port visit to Sydney once. So,
Oh, cool! How amazing! That must have been an incredible life.
yeah, that's one word for it.
A whole nother story, right? Right. We've got about 10-ish more minutes left, and I want to make sure if anybody else has questions, feel free to let me know. Put it in the chat if you want me to ask it, or just let me know that you have a question that you want to ask. And I failed to turn on any lights in my room, and it's starting to get dark outside, so I feel like I'm kind of fading away in the dark. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Charlotte, is that, well, I just have so many, and obviously we're not going to get through them all, but Franny is really drawn to the sea. And a lot of stories, and she seems to, you know, I immediately kind of got goosebumps when you were talking about her diving into the water, and when she rescued the boys. And I won't give too much away for people who haven't read the book yet, but what is the sea special for you in particular? what's the emphasis of her being drawn to the sea? What draws the character Fanny to the sea?
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it's a number of things. I wanted to explore. I mean, I've always kind of loved the ocean and the sea, and I have a bit of a funny relationship with it because I get extremely seasick. So so kind of going out on boats is a bit of a challenge for me, and I do try to do it because I love it so much, but I get really, sick to my stomach. Anyway, that's not Franny. I think I've also kind of always loved a lot of mythology around the ocean, and particularly the Selkie myth, which I'm not sure if anyone knows about, but it's a Celtic myth about seals that can shed their seal skin and become humans and walk on land. And if a human, is able to capture their seal skin and keep it from them, then they can keep this creature on land, keep the woman on land, but she will always be sort of bound to the ocean and longing to get back to it. And I really love that. I love that story. And I sort of wanted Franny to feel a little bit like that, as though she's almost born in the wrong body. She's almost trapped on land when she'd rather be in the sea. And there's also kind of a reflection of her love of birds and flight in that, because when she goes into the ocean, she feels weightless. She feels like it's a way of flying. And there's such a connection between the ocean, what's happening to the ocean, the creatures in the ocean, and what's happening to our long haul migratory birds as well, because they take paths that are over the ocean and they feed from the ocean. And I think it's all sort of really importantly connected. So it made sense for her to sort of be between these two worlds, between sky and sea.
Thanks for that, Charlotte. Yeah, I got cold every time she jumped into the water.
Yeah.
So we all of a sudden have a flurry of conversation going on in our chat. So, and Claire, I didn't know, let me just read these, and then I'm going to just read all of them. And then, maybe we can just kind of dive into one or two of them. So Claire is saying, and Claire's here somewhere, Claire, she says, I'm struck by the reader's focus on personality of the protagonist. I also admire the deep research you've woven into the story about the birds and their natural settings. So let me move to the next one, and then we've got a question. So Anita Baker wrote, Charlotte, you weave a complex view of Franny, and how did you see her complexities in relationship with her mother and family, and how does her life relate to the bird survival and life itself, and her relationship with her Neil, her husband?
Niall, yeah. Her husband.
Niall. And how did you want to make the analogy with the birds? And then let me just read one more question and we'll dive into, and then I've got, there's actually a flurry of lots of things. So you weave a complex life of Franny, and how do you see her complexities and relate? Oh, did I read that already? No, actually that's a new question. So
No, that's the same question.
Same question. Thank you. And then question is, why do readers seem to, oh, you know what? I'm repeating, sorry.
No, I think she's just clarifying what the question is.
Gotcha. Thanks for that.
Why do readers seem to focus on personality of the protagonist almost exclusively? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I can't, I think because it is Franny, I've written Franny from the first person point of view, you can't help but be, I would hope, deeply immersed in her skin. And I tried to kind of write a lot of physical descriptors that could allow you to be in her body, such as the way it feels when you dive into an icy sea. And so, I think it's important that you do connect with her on that kind of deeply personal level, because she's the avenue for connecting with the birds and the natural world and the setting. She's the way that you can connect in a broader sense with the grief of species loss. I think you do need that personal connection to do that. It helps bring it to life, make it feel more kind of visceral. Sorry, I just jumped in and answered that.
No, that's great. No, we're running a little short on time, and then all of a sudden there was this flurry of questions. So I don't know which one you want to take next, or what you want to think about talking about.
Ken, I will say I love The Secret of Rowan Inish. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time. I grew up watching that. Michelle's asked, how's writing this book changed your life or creative process? I mean, enormously. I'm a completely different writer, and I'm a different person after having written this book. I think I look at the world in a different way. My subsequent books are also about ways that humans connect with the natural world. The book that came after Migrations is about the reintroduction of wolves in order to rewild a landscape. So I've kind of, that's really come into my life as an important thing that I want to sort of try to grapple with and explore. And it's, in terms of my creative process, it definitely kind of, it's tricky trying to sort of tell a human story, but also to tell a story that takes on the enormity of climate change and species loss and rewilding. And, those are really big things to try and explore. And I think the only way that I have found to do that is to distill it down into a single kind of question or story, and also to relate it to the personal character and what they're kind of going through, and how that bigger sense of loss relates to their own sort of more intimate sense of loss. I hope that answers that question. But it did. And also, I guess in a broader sense, the book has been widely read and translated, and it's getting turned into a film, and so all that stuff really makes a big difference in my life as well. It allows me to kind of work full time on my writing,
which is awesome for writers. Absolutely. And that was actually one of my questions about filming and how engaged you are in that process of creating a film. I'm super excited to see that, because the story was just so so we're pretty much out of time. And for those of you that haven't read the book, I hope that you go to your local bookstore, purchase the book, and take a good read of it. You have a website, Charlotte?
Yep.
Are there ways that people can engage with you? Is that an option?
My email's on my website, so you can always email me directly, or various social media channels, or you can just check in with the website about upcoming book information, that sort of thing.
Beautiful. So for those of you that we didn't have an opportunity to chat about your specific thought or your specific question, feel free to follow Charlotte, email if you want to dive in a little bit deeper. And thank you so much, Charlotte, for joining us on the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. Delightful to have you. Love the story and your writing. And I have more questions for you, but it's a wonderful book. And thank you so much. And now I need to go out and get your other book so that I can read it. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and we will see you next month on the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. Everybody have a great evening, and thank you again so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you so much, Charlotte.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.